What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about a champion called Anax, or another champion spotlight video. So as we can see here, we do have Anax. He is a new Undead Hordes attack based epic champion. Really cool kit, and I'm really loving the way his weapons look. So once again, of all of these new champions, they're actually doing a really good job on, well, I can't say all of them. Some of them are kind of reskins, as we saw with Chancellor Yasmin, but that's another story. This guy looks decently unique with the model, so overall I'm pretty happy with the aesthetics of this champion. Going over his skills, we have a double hit A1 that also applies a defense down with a 30 up to a 35% chance, which is definitely good. Next, we have Deathly Ichors on the A2, which is a 3-turn cooldown. Once fully booked, has a 75 up to 100% chance of placing a 50% accuracy decrease and a 5% poison for 3 turns. Now this is each hit, so he can place 2 poisons on this A2 ability. Finally, moving on to his A3, Soul Feast attacks one enemy, has a 75 up to 100% chance of placing that 25% weaken for 2 turns, heals this champion by 50% of the damage inflicted. So really cool 3-turn cooldown once again after he is fully booked. And here we have another champion that can be a defense down and weaken champion based on how his kit works, and his AI is really going to make or break what we figure out about this champion here. So as we can see from Revenant, his passive, a 5-turn cooldown, placing a 60% defense up on this champion when their HP drops below 75%, placing that attack up on this champion when his HP drops below 50%, and then the active effect, granting that extra turn when this champion's HP drops below 10%. So we have a lot of cool interactions here, rather unique as far as how we've kind of seen this in a threshold from 75 to 50, then finally 10% as far as what it actually can do for you. Now, as far as the masteries that were used here, there is a War Master, there is Lore of Steel, as well as the decreasing the cooldown, because his cooldowns are definitely going to be very crucial in making sure he does a ton of damage. Now, after looking at the kit, let's go over the stats we're using here. We have 25,000 health, 5.4 thousand attack, 1.6 thousand defense, 187 speed, 77 crit rate, 270 crit damage, and then finally 304% accuracy. Now before moving on, I do want to give a huge shout out to Schlotzer for letting me use this account and testing out this champion, so I do appreciate that and thank you for letting me use this account. Now the first place I wanted to test this guy is actually going to be Spider. Now the fact that the defense down and weaken are on an A3 as well as an A1 can definitely look and be a little bit problematic when trying to put it through your head and figure out what's going to be the best way to actually use this. So when doing this, the ideal comp for this is actually going to be something like Miscreated Monster, Sir Nicholas, anyone providing you with additional support on your champion with a very large shield, 3 enemy max health champions, or someone like an HP burn champion, and finally Anax as that 5th champion role. And this is going to be unique because I don't think I've seen someone do this before. But if you understand how AI works, he's probably going to use that A2 first, because usually you do want to get the poisons and the decreased accuracy out based on the AI over a weaken ability. So let's take a look and actually see what happens in this run here. So based on the kind of waviness of his AI and how everything's are spread out, okay, so we were correct in him using that A2 first, but the thing is, Takedown is going to be used with no debuffs. We're also going to have a Heartseeker used with no debuffs here, so this is the interesting part. Now he's going to use that weaken ability on the 2-turn duration, and only one Heartseeker is going to get benefit from that weaken. Now this is where things are so unique and where you can actually cycle through all of these cooldowns until he actually applies that A1 ability. We did see it just get resisted there, so this is going to be interesting, and we'll see how this plays out overall. The goal is to have defense down and weaken up for the next reset on when these champions actually get their turns to use their enemy max health abilities. So now we can see the A1 did go off again there. And basically all we're trying to do is buy time to make sure defense down is applied to the boss, or any other max health abilities are in fact used. So there it is, that defense down ability. So now defense down and weaken are up, and we're going to see how this kind of interacts with our enemy max health champions. We do have one Heartseeker and another Takedown ready to be used. There we just saw the Takedown. Now we're kind of waiting for the Heartseeker, and there we have it, 1 minute and 16 seconds using a champion with a unique kit like Anax here. where he doesn't have the defense down on weekend on A2 and A3, so it's not being used in synchrony with each other, but this maybe opens it up to the audience as far as what other choices you have if you do have a shielding champion, 3 enemy max health champions that you can use to make sure you're really getting the full benefit from the debuffs here. So the first thing I did think of when I saw that was in fact someone like a Fane and what this guy can do with Fane. Now, as we can see here, we are using this guy in a double Rashkard the Tower Ultra Nightmare team. So this is definitely really cool here, and let's head straight into it and see how much damage this guy can actually do, having that defense down, having the weaken, and finally adding that utility with the poisons. Okay, so let's start this run on the red affinity here, and we're going to start with an A1 from Mashald, followed by an A3 from the first tower, an A2 from the second tower. Now we can use this A3 ability here from Krila, and finally we'll just hit auto and watch things cycle through now. So as we can see, he actually used his A3 first instead of the A2 like he did when we were fighting the spider boss here. And obviously the ally attack, we did not end up placing that defense down, but as you can see, it's really cool synergy with something like an ally attack champion, since he does have that defense down on the A1, which will definitely help when we are cycling through all of this. As far as his base multipliers go, we all saw the stats before. He wasn't at 100% crit rate simply because of how things ended up getting sorted. So that's the good news as far as that goes. So now we're kind of just waiting for that defense down to get onto the boss, and poisons, I don't think it's going to be crazy as far as his actual poison output damage, but can this champion be a part of a 1E team? That's going to be the overall question at the end there. And let's see if he can finally get this defense down on the boss. So he wasn't picked for the ally attack, which obviously with someone like Krila who only picks 4 champions is something to consider. And once again, we do still have the only weaken on the boss, having yet to find a place to actually spot that A1 ability. Now this is going to be, to my knowledge, a 2-to-1 ratio team as far as how things set up, because we do have Mashald in the team, and this is kind of like a salad eater team without the man eaters, simply using 2 Rashkard the Towers. So this is definitely a cool team. We finally do have this defense down a weekend, and one thing to notice, his multipliers actually are pretty decent as far as they go. So he's doing a solid amount of damage, and the only thing he's missing here is, since there's no unkillable buff, his health isn't going to drop. You're not going to see the benefits from that interesting passive with the threshold bonuses. Now this is going to apply if you do want to try and use this guy for a Bat Eater team. One thing you can do with a team like a Bat Eater is you don't really have to worry about the extra turn, since the 5th man spot, as we saw from my last video, doesn't matter if you get that extra turn after the clan boss goes, because this champion is in fact always due to go first in that 2-to-1 ratio Bat Eater unkillable team. So this guy definitely also has potential in that 5th spot, since he applies the defense down, the weaken. Is he going to be as good as Fane? Is he going to be better than Fane? Honestly, you would have to test it out in Bat Eater. Obviously, we don't have the Bat Eater team here, so I can't personally test that, but if you guys want to test that, definitely do that. Leave me a comment here. Let me know what you guys see with this team as far as using that Bat Eater. What we're going to do now is we are going to actually wait and see what ends up happening, and we'll shift to that end screen once the battle comes to a conclusion. Alright guys, so now that we're a bit further into the run, we can kind of get a gauge on what kind of debuffs are on this team. As you can see, turn 45, we are over 77, now 78 million damage on Ultra Nightmare. Now what's amazing here is we are looking at Krila and both Rashkard the Towers providing weak hits on this affinity. So the fact that it's putting out this much damage is really incredible here. So we do have the strong affinity from Anax as well as Mashald, but once again, the fact that there are 3 weak affinity champions here and it's putting out this much damage on Ultra Nightmare is rather incredible, especially since Anax is like that key character in this team here. As we can see, as of right now, we're not necessarily filling up all of the debuffs here. We do have block buffs from Rashkard the Tower. We do have the decrease accuracy coming out from Anax, as well as the poisons and weaken currently available. We did just apply that defense down on the boss, but we don't have accuracy on Mashald here, so we don't have to worry about that too much. So there are a bunch of extra debuffs on this boss, which is kind of the point I was trying to get at as far as what can actually be done to this boss. You probably won't be using toxic sets if you wanted to replicate this exact team. You're pretty much almost capping out the buffs. Obviously there's a lot of RNG. It depends on Krila and her ally attack on who gets actually picked for the 4 champions here in applying that consistent defense down ability. But as you can see here, we have 3 or 5 poisons on the boss here, so that's definitely not bad from a champion like this. So we just hit turn 50 there. 86.92 million damage, 11 million damage from Krila Witch Arm, 23 from Mashald, 7.3 from the first Rush Card the Tower, 37.1 million damage from Anax, and finally 8.4 million damage from the second Rush Card the Tower. So once again, definitely extremely impressive numbers from Anax overall, and the fact that this team had 3 champions providing weak hits. Now, one thing I wasn't able to test while I've been on this account that you have to keep in mind when going forward if you want to use them for the clan boss. This has only been tested for red affinity and when the health has been low. If we've learned one thing from Plarium, it is that nothing is safe when it comes to the AI. This was tested in Spider, and with a full health Spider, he was also using all of his abilities in a certain order, so that is kind of the good news. However, you never know if for some reason on Void Affinity this guy decides he doesn't want to use one of his abilities on auto. So if you have this champion, you have the ability to test him in Ultra Nightmare on something like a Void Affinity, definitely let me know. Is this AI working properly? Is it not working properly? That way support and feedback can be sent to Plarium, it can be fixed, and he can return to being as strong as we see here, doing 37.1 million damage. So one thing that really adds to this damage, I'm not sure if you guys noticed in the clip I just showed you at the end there, but he was doing a massive amount of raw damage, meaning his multipliers are actually extremely high, and if you put him in the right gear, he can be a huge asset to your team, not just relying on those poison debuffs. Alright guys, that's going to be my champion spotlight on Anax, the undead attack-based epic champion. Give me your thoughts. What do you think about this champion? Where do you plan on using him if you have this champion already pulled? Don't forget, if you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.